Hey, what's up? I'm Michael Rasica from YoungArchitect.com. Right now, there's a lot of people really mad at NCARB because of some changes with the architect exam. And there's a lot of people writing letters and petitions and really focusing on a lot of the problems. And I'll be honest, I actually started writing a letter. I started writing a letter about the problems, and it felt really heavy and frustrating. And I was having a hard time just having the energy to do it. And the more I thought about these problems, I realized the solutions are actually pretty straightforward. I don't think they're that complicated. And so I've decided that instead of writing another letter about problems, I want to make a video focused on the solutions that I think NCARB needs to go through. And so I've created, 7 ways NCARB could quickly fix their current problems. But before we get into that, I just want to kind of set the record straight and kind of give you my personal, take on NCARB. First off, I want to make it clear that I actually want NCARB to succeed. I want NCARB to succeed. I'm on Team NCARB. I believe we need NCARB. I believe in NCARB's mission. I believe in their purpose. I don't always agree how they go about doing it. However, I don't think NCARB is expendable. I think that I think everyone needs NCARB to succeed for the profession to succeed. A lot of people have come to me recently and said, Mike, that's not true. We don't need NCARB to succeed. We don't actually need NCARB at all. We could get rid of NCARB, let them fail, and the states could do their own thing with architecture licensing. And I don't agree. I don't see that as a viable option. I think it would actually be easier to fix NCARB and set them up for success than it would be to figure out how architectural licensing works across 55 different jurisdictions. So I want NCARB to succeed. I don't think it's an option. AIA is another story, though. I feel like I see so many people get so angry with the AIA, with what they've done or said or whatever, this or that. And I always say, listen, AIA it's a club. It's an option. And if you don't want to participate in that club, then don't give them your money and don't be a member. Whereas NCARB's another story. I think we all got to get NCARB up to speed, and we got to help them, and we have to help them succeed to help us succeed. So I make this video with love and compassion. Sometimes love hurts and it can be uncomfortable, but it's worth it in the name of growth and progress. And, I want NCARB to grow up to be the organization that we want them to be so they could help us succeed. All right, I got a list of notes right here. Let's go through my 7 ways how NCARB could easily fix their current problems. Number 1, NCARB needs to abandon this unrealistic ARI 5.1 timeline. It's been a rough year. It's been a really rough year for NCARB and ARI stakeholders. And I'll be honest, the community has not recovered. We have not recovered from the testing shutdown that took place from March till, I think it was March till the middle of June, if I remember off the top. Maybe it was July. I can't remember. But there was months that we weren't able to take tests. And there was a lot of people who had their exams canceled 3, 4, 5, 6 times before they were actually able to get back inside a testing center. And so everyone has lost a significant amount of time because they couldn't take that test and they couldn't move to the next test, the next level. It's held everyone back. We've all lost a lot of time. And now NCARB comes along and they want to roll out changes for too many things all at once. Between now and November, they're making big changes to the exam by introducing 5.1. They're including, remote proctoring. This has never been done before. There has new softwares, tools, and protocols. Because of all these changes, NCARB now needs to reestablish cut scores. What that means is they got to figure out what the passing rate is of these exams. And the last time NCARB did that, you know what happened? Lots of people failed. Lots of people. And NCARB was aware of it, and they gave out $100 gift cards begging people to help them figure this thing out. And at a certain point, they just said, listen, if you fail, we'll give you a free retake. But now is not the time to do this cut score process. Are you kidding me? We have lost so much time right now. And then I think what really is kind of the icing on the cake with this unrealistic timeline is in 1 year, so they're going to roll all this stuff out in November, and then in 1 year, they're going to make a massive change. They've always used Prometric to deliver their exams. They're moving to a new company called PSI. Which is a completely new company who NCARB has never worked with before. I don't know if PSI knows what they signed up for by taking NCARB on as a client. And I don't know. I was actually a little bit surprised, to be honest with you, with seeing how NCARB has always treated Prometric so poorly. I was surprised PSI was even willing to go down this road with them. So I think that's going to be a huge change down the road. What frustrates me the most, and is I just think that NCARB, they've never rolled out big changes like this at such an unrealistic timeline. ARI 5.0, when that came out, that was announced so far in advance. of when these changes would take place. Everyone was alerted to what was happening. They were very transparent about making those changes. Now it's like, there are people who have exams scheduled in November, and they scheduled those exams before NCARB made those changes. And now those people are going to be impacted by these changes, and that wasn't what they signed up for when they scheduled those tests. I think this is completely unrealistic timeline. I'd also say no one's asked for these changes at such an unrealistic schedule. And what we have been asking for is for NCARB to fix their existing 5.0 software for about 4 years now. These computers are crashing every single day across America. It's not a coincidence. There are massive software glitches and bugs in that software. And at this point, people are questioning if they can't even administer these exams properly in a controlled setting, like how do I even know that they're not improperly grading my exam on the back end? There's big problems with their software, and that's what we've been asking them to fix. And so remote proctoring, it sounded like a great idea when no one was allowed in a testing center. Yeah, okay, let's explore this, but I wonder what everyone thinks about it now that testing's resumed, we're trying to get back to normal, and now, all of these rules like the scratch paper, the community exploded when they heard that you're no longer allowed to write stuff down. Architecture people cannot think if you don't allow us to do this with a piece of paper. So I think NCARB needs to go back to the drawing board on this unrealistic timeline. It's not realistic. I think they need to receive feedback from the people who will be impacted by these changes with what they would like to see happen. But I worry, and this is one of my biggest concerns, is that I'm not sure how realistic that is. What I've learned with NCARB is this is an organization that's never reversed a decision. They've never taken blame and said, we've screwed up. We're going to go back on what the original plan is. We're seeing how the impact this is. They've never done that. I worry that once we're going down this path, there's no turning back. So those are my thoughts on that. I think they need to get rid of this timeline. All right, second solution. I believe NCARB needs to appropriately address exam security and remote proctoring. As a licensed architect, me and a lot of other people truly believe that NCARB's giving people the green light to cheat the ARE with remote proctoring, and I wish they would talk about it. Currently, if you want to take an architect exam and get inside one of those testing centers, the security is stricter in a testing center than it is at an international airport. And with remote proctoring, I'm not convinced that there's someone on the other end of the computer, camera is going to be able to, have the same security as they have inside the testing center. If you go on Amazon and type in the term hidden camera, there's hundreds of options there's hundreds of tools under $100, which could easily bypass the security of remote proctoring. What they want you to do is move the camera around and show people what's in the room. I'm just not convinced that that's secure. So I have two questions I want NCARB to answer. I want them to talk about. In the name of protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the public, what additional security measures is NCARB taking versus other exams? The second question is, what will happen when people cheat the ARE? What does that look like? What is that process? What are the punishments that will take place? I just wish they would talk about it. I'm tired of hearing people talk about other exams that have nothing to do with the health, safety, and welfare of the public. I don't care about what happens with the LEAD exam or the WELL exam. When people cheat those exams, they're not endangering the health, safety, and welfare of the public. And I'm always thinking about risks. And, I think when I think about the worst case scenarios, I think the worst case scenario was someone cheats the ARE. They have not demonstrated their ability to protect the health, safety, and welfare of the public. They go out and they practice architecture and someone gets killed or something. I worry that, some smartass is going to set up a hidden camera behind them, record every question on all of their exams, publish it as a video and put it on 4chan, and suddenly they've disclosed all of the content of the architect exam. Now NCARB's got to shut down these exams, rewrite the tests. So my real concern is I'm really worried about damaging the public opinion of what the value of an architecture license is. And I could see one of these worst case scenarios happening, and suddenly it's harder for licensed architects to be taken seriously within public opinion of what we do and what our profession is. So I just want NCARB to address that they're taking the exam security seriously and what will happen when people get caught. I really think this needs to be emphasized because I'm a little nervous about this remote proctoring thing. All right, my third solution is, I'm not entirely against remote proctoring, but I believe remote proctoring should be used on an as-needed basis, only as an accommodation for people who truly need it. I think remote proctoring is a good thing for maybe 5 to 10% of the people who can't make it into a testing center because of a medical condition, or they live internationally or in a remote part of the country, or there's some kind of issue. I do see this as a viable option, but I do not see this as a solution for the masses. The rules of remote proctoring and taking it in a testing center should not be the same. They're not, right out of the gate, they're not the same. And this is where the scratch paper situation comes in. NCARB, not having scratch paper makes sense for remote proctoring, because if you're going to write something on a piece of paper, there's no way for someone on that other end of that camera to be able to take that paper away from you and destroy it. So that makes sense to me. But where the scratch paper problem starts is NCARB's now saying that the experience has to be the same as remote proctoring as it is inside the testing center. So if people can't use scratch paper on remote proctoring, you're not using it in the testing center, and they said it's a liability. Now, it's not the same experience. When people are taking these exams in different settings and on their own equipment with someone through a computer screen, it's not the same experience. And NCARB shot themselves in the foot by saying it's a liability. What do you mean it's a liability? We've always done it this way. We're trained as architects to do this with scratch paper. Architecture people can't think unless they have the ability to do this on a piece of paper. So, I think remote proctoring needs to be reevaluated and how they use it and how they look at it. I think it's a solution I think it's an accommodation. It's not an answer for the masses. All right, number 4 solution. NCARB needs to include their stakeholders in everything that they do. There are none of the people who are impacted by these current changes were a part of making these decisions and deciding how these things would roll out. And the way the community keeps interacting with NCARB is through petitions. We shouldn't have to be making petitions. Someone made a petition the other day about these changes, and like 2 days ago, and I looked at it right before making this video, it had like 2,000 signatures. This shouldn't be the way things go. We shouldn't have to constantly yelling at the state boards and the AIA for problems with NCARB. And, a couple of months ago when they put out that diversity statement, about how they've created diversity on the board of directors, and all of a sudden it brought all this attention to the board of directors, and people said these people are not reflective of who I am or my generation. Why are they the ones making all these decisions? So I truly believe, I think one of the biggest solutions would be if NCARB started including everyday people a part of making all of their decisions. And I want to emphasize everyday people. Not the same 2% who always get all the attention. Do you ever feel like sometimes it's always the same people on every committee, the same people win all the awards, the same, all of the same people are always on these committees. I want everyday people who have no social clout or political connections to the AIA or NCARB. I want to stop giving these roles to decision makers, these decision maker roles to NCARB's friends. No more architecture politicians. I want people whose egos or resumes do not need this position with working with NCARB so they can fill some kind of quota for volunteering as a tool to work their way towards some AIA award that they're trying to go after. I want everyday people helping NCARB, working with them through this process. There is no representation from any of their stakeholders on any of these decisions that have been made. All right, number 5 solution. NCARB needs to hire a full-time staff member to be the public face of all NCARB public relations. Someone who is professionally trained in communicating with the public, not in architecture. 90% of NCARB's problems over the past 5 years could have been resolved if they knew how to communicate and interact with the public. And I say this with love, as constructive criticism, with no disrespect, and I'm not using anyone's names right here, but there is no one on NCARB's team who is socially savvy or knows how to effectively work with the public. Most of you guys have architecture degrees, not communication degrees. And so there's no doubt in my mind that NCARB's team, they are massively intelligent, brilliant people who are very good at what they do. They are wicked smart. None of you are good communicators, not one. And so, and it's, back a couple months ago, NCARB tried to get everyone so excited about ARI 5.1. And they're like, we're at 5.1, it's going to solve all the problems. Everything's going to be at 5.1. They're so excited about it. But really, what people wanted to know, there were 3 questions people cared about. The first was, when can I get back in the testing center? 2, when are you going to fix the software? 3, why are the pass rates so poor? And then NCARB, that's what people cared about. That's what people want to know. And NCARB's like promoting all these new things, and they're trying to get people excited about it, and it fell completely flat, and it was completely tone deaf to what was truly happening. There was a huge disconnect. So when NCARB releases information, they never consider how the information will be received, what the pushback will be, or how to even respond when it happens. They've been so poor at responding. NCARB's poor communication skills is undermining all of the hard work that they are doing. And I truly believe NCARB will continue to move backwards with having their stakeholders' trust until they figure this out. It's been a problem for a very long time, and a lot of people who don't trust NCARB and feel like they're at the mercy of whatever these decision makers say. And it shouldn't be that way. All right, number 6 solution. I believe NCARB needs a new leader. It's time to replace Michael Armstrong. I've been following Michael Armstrong for many years, and so my opinion of him is watching him from the public's perspective. I've never been in a room or had a conference meeting with him or have worked with him on anything directly. I've seen him speak many times. I've shaken his hand many times. But so this is my opinion as the public. I've never seen him interact, really get engaged with NCARB stakeholders, the ARE community, and I don't believe he's accessible as a person. I've never really truly seen him step up as a leader or get involved with any of the issues. I'll talk more about that in a minute. Instead, he's done a great job of distancing himself from a lot of NCARB's problems and really pushing his staff to kind of deal with things. Quite frankly, I think he's the Wizard of Oz. I'm sure he's a good man, but it's very clear, I think, that he's a terrible wizard. And I say this, because I see him channeling, and from my public perspective, I see him channeling a lot of energy into the wrong direction. For years, I've been watching him work on this IPAL program. And it's if you don't know what IPAL is, it's this idea of, let's implement, while students are in architecture school, let's have them do all of their AXP experience hours while they're in architecture school. And then on top of that, let's have them take the architect exam while they're still in architecture school. So in theory, they'll graduate architecture school as a licensed architect. And if we could promote that and sell that to parents, it would be so much easier to get people to sign up for architecture school. So they've done this. And, the way NCARB's kind of spun it is, for people to be successful in this IPAL program, students need to just show up and take the test. They don't actually have to learn or pass or anything. They just got to show up and make the moves to go through that testing, to show up and say that they've taken the test. So I talk to students. I've talked to students all over America, and this IPAL thing's a mess. It's a disaster. I say, how's your thesis project going? And they go, it's a freaking mess because I'm trying to study for PPD and PDD at the same time. And my opinion is, I think that the way we think about architecture in architecture school is a completely opposite way about how we need to think about architecture while we're taking architect exams. And it's just been a huge failure, from my opinion. And Michael Armstrong's worked really hard at pushing this. And 2 weeks ago, we all read his article in NCARB magazine. And it seems to me that he's spending a lot of resources and time really trying to focus on impressing the parents of 17-year-olds who are thinking about sending their kid to architecture school. And he's done nothing to get involved with all of these recent issues. ARE 5.0 has been a mess. I've mentioned it before. The pass rates are terrible. My big tipping point with Michael Armstrong, when I really started to say this guy's got to go, is when NCARB failed to sign up for the Prometric Essential Client Program. They got caught with their pants down. And all of Prometric's other clients managed to join this program, except for NCARB. And suddenly, thousands of people were losing their exams getting canceled. And so when they finally figured it out, NCARB sends the stakeholders, the candidates, this paragraph from an anonymous person at customer service saying, we fixed it, we've resolved everything. Like a day or two later, Michael Armstrong wrote this 8-page letter on NCARB letterhead addressed to all the AIA executive directors, basically outlining like, it's not our fault. This is what happened. It's all Prometric's fault. NCARB's doing a great job. This is the situation. And it drove me nuts. I went crazy, and I said, why? Why is he not talking to the people who are impacted by his decisions and his actions? Why is he focusing on AIA executive directors? With no disrespect to those people, but it's not their job to communicate what's going on with NCARB and what's happening with people's exams. And so I think he's disconnected. I think it's time for NCARB to have new leadership. Now, one of the things, Michael Armstrong is not an architect, and a lot of people really hammer on him for this. He's a lawyer. He has a lawyer background. He's not an architect. But I'll be honest, I don't see that as an issue. I don't really care what his education is or what his background is. I care about his leadership skills. I care about his charisma and his ability to make the right decisions to move NCARB and the profession in the right direction. All right, my last solution, probably my most important solution, is I think NCARB needs a fundamental cultural change at all levels. The current culture in thinking, logic, and all decisions at NCARB have always been based around what's best for NCARB. It needs to change to what's best for our stakeholders in the future of the profession. NCARB has always embraced this very authoritarian role focused around rules, red tape, and their own self-preservation. And it's very clear, NCARB's role is to be the regulator. I've talked about this in other videos. Their job is to regulate the practice of architecture. It's not their job. It's not their job to be advocates or cheerleaders for everyone to succeed. I get that. Fine. However, NCARB needs to do their job as regulators, but also always stop engaging with their stakeholders in an adversarial way. My relationship with NCARB started back in 2008, and I could say it has consistently and it has always felt that NCARB is not on the architect's team, and they could care less if me, you, or the profession of architecture ever succeeds. NCARB is really focused on NCARB and their own preservation and their own success. So those are my opinions on what the solutions could be. And so to wrap up this video, I want to just kind of run through a couple of quick things. I believe progress with NCARB has always been one step forward at the expense of 2 steps backwards. I believe, while there's a lot of problems, we can't just always point the finger at NCARB. I believe the profession is just as equally to blame for a lot of these problems. And I've been yelling this from the tops of buildings and trees all over America. This is the foundation of the young architect business that I built and everything that I work on. No one is advocating for the next generation of architects. No one wants to speak out. No one wants to get involved. Everyone signs up for these leadership roles, and then suddenly when the time comes to have an uncomfortable conversation, it's crickets, and everyone disappears and runs the opposite direction. And this has been made clear in 2020. No one is really advocating or speaking out or questioning or getting involved. I think it's the profession. We can blame NCARB all we want, but I think the profession is just as much responsible for all these problems because we've let it get to this point. And so over the past couple of days, I've been talking to a lot of very upset people with these changes. And this is my advice. And I just keep saying the same thing as I say, listen, if you want your architecture license, you got to fight for it. NCARB doesn't just give out these architecture licenses. Even, and these problems aren't new. If you want to become a licensed architect, you have to fight for it. You have to study your ass off. They're going to tell you you failed, you're a failure. They're going to cancel your exams. They're going to screw up your paperwork. They're going to create these changes. They're going to be very difficult. They've always have been. And I would say every single person that gets to that finish line goes through this. You're not unique. My situation isn't different from the next person's situation who had a lot of problems dealing with NCARB. So if you're not willing to fight for it, then, you're never going to get there. And so my attitude and what I've been recommending is I say, just listen. Well, yes, you need to speak out. You need to speak out. You need to fight. We need to push back. We also have to keep studying. We have to keep studying. We have to keep working hard. And I would say they're gonna throw monkey wrenches at us, and we got to figure out how to adapt and how to change and how to do what we got to do to get to that finish line. And that's the only way you're gonna get there. Is you have to fight for it. You have to adapt and figure it out. We're gonna figure it out. I'll be honest, I don't think any of these changes and everything that people are really upset about right now, it's not going to be a barrier. Even this digital whiteboard people are freaking out about. We'll figure out how to use it in an effective way to help you move forward. So we got to become resilient. And I made another video about this, and I said these are great life skills for the next chapter of your life when you start your own business or embrace entrepreneurship. Going through all this, let's use it as an opportunity to be resilient. Let's not just let people walk all over us, and let's just keep fighting. And that's how you're going to get there. So those are my thoughts. Those are my thoughts on solutions. I hope this was helpful. Have a great day. Take care.